The champagne was untouched, the lipstick still on the glass, and the husband was in the lobby claiming his wife vanished on a morning hike. But the tour guide standing in their honeymoon cabin was staring at a phone screen still connected to the TV. Geothermal pool body decomposition rate. How long does it take to freeze to death? Iceland winter. Iceland murder rate. The searches were dated, time-stamped, hours before the husband said his wife disappeared. Then Einar saw the bathroom. The luminol would later light it up like stars, blood everywhere, hastily cleaned, edges missed. And in the trash, clumps of brown hair pulled out by the roots. This wasn't a missing person case. This was a murder, planned in the darkness, staged in paradise. And the husband thought Iceland's isolation would let him get away with it. He was wrong. Too many stories like this go unheard. Subscribe and drop your country in the comments so we know how far her story reached. It was 7:42 a.m. at the Aurora Ridge Resort on Iceland's south coast when Einar Halldórsson knocked on the door of cabin 5. The storm had knocked out power to every glass-domed cabin on the property except one. Cabin 5, the honeymoon suite, still had that faint bluish glow flickering through its window. Einar, who'd been guiding glacier tours for 7 winters and knew every hum and creak of this place, volunteered to check the generator lines. He knocked again. No answer. The Do Not Disturb tag hung from the handle, fluttering in the Arctic wind. But the door, slightly ajar. Inside, the fire had gone cold. Champagne from last night sat untouched on the table, one glass still bearing lipstick. Her parka draped neatly over the chair. Her boots were gone. His weren't. That bothered him. In Iceland, you don't go outside without boots. Not in January. Not when it's -12 Celsius and the nearest help is 15 kilometers away. Hello, Aurora Ridge staff. Einar called out in English. Silence. Then he saw the TV. Still on. Still connected to someone's phone. The screen was frozen on a Google search page, cursor blinking beside the words, "How long before a body freezes solid?" Einar stepped closer, his breath catching. The next tab read, Iceland missing persons no foul play statistics. Another, geothermal pool body decomposition rate. Another, weather forecast Skogafoss region January. The phone was still connected. The name on the screen, Felix Rasmussen. Einar had met the couple the day before, Felix and his wife, Talia. She'd been laughing, snapping photos of the northern lights reflected in the lagoon behind the resort. He'd offered them a spot on his glacier cave tour that morning, but Felix declined. "Just us two," Felix had said, smiling that easy smile. "We want something more, private." Private. Now she was gone. On the counter, Einar noticed a rental car key beside a printed itinerary. Check out tomorrow. One-way flight from Reykjavik to Copenhagen, 3:15 p.m. One passenger. Felix Rasmussen. Her name wasn't on it. Her passport was nowhere in sight. He turned toward the bathroom. The light was on, door half open. Steam ghosted from under it, but when he pushed it open, the tub was empty. Just the faint scent of lavender bath salts. Her phone charger still plugged in. Her toothbrush wet. She hadn't gone far. Or she hadn't gone at all. Then Einar saw something that made his stomach drop. In the trash bin beside the toilet, crumpled but unmistakable, a printed confirmation receipt. Not for tours. Not for restaurants. For a life insurance policy. 2 million euros. Beneficiary, Felix Rasmussen. Policy date, January 10th. 4 days before their flight to Iceland. Einar grabbed his phone and took photos. The searches. The receipt. The half-packed suitcase with only men's clothes inside. Because within the hour, Felix Rasmussen would be at the front desk, frantic, claiming his wife vanished during a morning hike near the ridge. That she slipped on ice. That she was probably trapped in a crevasse. That it was all a tragic, devastating accident. But Einar knew something no one else did yet. He knew no man plans a romantic honeymoon and spends the night before Googling how long a body takes to freeze. And in Iceland, where the January sun rises at 11 a.m. and sets by 4 p.m., where tourists die every year from weather and crevasse falls and hypothermia. Staging an accident isn't hard. It's perfect. So how did Felix plan to get away with murder? That tour guide found a life insurance receipt and Google searches about body decomposition in their honeymoon cabin. And if that just made you realize how perfectly normal things can hide deadly intentions, you understand why this channel exists. Right now, someone watching this video is planning a honeymoon with a partner who's Googling accident statistics instead of romantic restaurants. Someone else is ignoring the fact that their fiancé insists on the most remote, dangerous location possible. Your subscription isn't about true crime entertainment. It's about spreading awareness that saves actual lives. And if you're thinking, I'll subscribe after I see how it ends, remember, Talia thought she had time too. She thought Iceland's beauty meant safety. She thought his adventure spirit was romantic. She was murdered under the northern lights while tourists slept peacefully next door. Subscribe now. Not later. Someone needs to see this today. Talia Kovac was 29 years old when she married Felix Rasmussen. She worked as a data analyst for a cybersecurity firm in Copenhagen. Smart. Methodical. The kind of person who triple-checked flight times and kept color-coded spreadsheets for everything from grocery lists to vacation budgets. Her colleagues described her as warm but careful, someone who thought before she spoke, who noticed patterns others missed. She was close with her younger sister, Nina. They FaceTimed every Sunday without fail. Nina would later tell police that Talia was the most organized person she'd ever known. She planned everything, Nina said. Even spontaneous things were planned. So when Talia agreed to marry someone she'd only known for 8 months, Nina was shocked. Felix Rasmussen was 33, a freelance travel photographer and outdoor gear consultant who'd built a modest Instagram following, about 40,000 followers, posting dramatic shots of himself scaling cliffs in Norway, diving in cenotes in Mexico, trekking across Patagonian glaciers. His bio read, "Chasing light, chasing life, chasing what terrifies me." Women found him magnetic. That scruffy beard, those piercing blue eyes. The way he talked about adventure like it was oxygen. Talia met him at a photography exhibit in Copenhagen. She'd gone alone, something she rarely did, because a coworker couldn't make it last minute. Felix was presenting a series called Edges of the Earth, all black and white shots of people silhouetted against extreme landscapes. Cliffs, ice sheets, volcanic ridges. They talked for 3 hours that night. He told her about growing up in Aalborg, about dropping out of university to backpack Southeast Asia, about nearly dying in an avalanche in the Swiss Alps and realizing life was too short for safe choices. She told him about her structured childhood, her cautious parents, how she'd never left Europe and sometimes wondered if she was missing something. "You are," he said, smiling. "Let me show you." Within 2 months, they were inseparable. Within 6 months, they were engaged. Her friends noticed things. Small things at first. How Felix always picked the restaurant. How he'd playfully tease her about being too careful or too boring. How he'd suggest she skip Sunday FaceTime with Nina because they had better plans. Her coworker, Amara, later told investigators, Talia started declining lunch invitations. She said Felix thought her job was draining her spirit, and that she should consider freelancing so they could travel together more. I asked if she wanted that, and she said she wasn't sure anymore. But here's what really worried Nina. 3 weeks before the wedding, Talia called her. Not their regular Sunday call, this was Tuesday, 11 p.m. "I need to tell you something," Talia said, her voice quiet. "I found something on Felix's laptop." "What?" "Financial stuff. He's in debt. A lot of debt. He borrowed money from his brother last year and never paid it back. His photography business, it's barely breaking even. And there's this other thing." "What other thing?" Talia hesitated. He had a folder. Old articles. About a woman named Ingrid. She died 4 years ago on a hiking trip in Norway. Felix was with her. Nina went cold. "What do you mean, with her?" "They were dating. She fell from a cliff. It was ruled an accident." Talia paused. "But Nina, Why would he keep articles about it? Why would he save them in a folder labeled Norway 2021 with all these photos? Did you ask him? He said it was trauma. That he still felt guilty for not being able to save her. That keeping the articles helped him process it. Talia's voice cracked. Maybe I'm being paranoid. Nina begged her to postpone the wedding. To at least talk to someone. To dig deeper. But Talia didn't. Because 2 days later, Felix surprised her with honeymoon tickets. Iceland. The Northern Lights. A private glass-domed cabin overlooking the south coast. He's trying, Talia told Nina. He knows I've been worried. This is his way of showing me he's serious about us. Nina asked where Talia wanted to go for their honeymoon. I wanted Greece, Talia admitted. Santorini, maybe. Somewhere warm. But Felix insisted. Iceland in January was the only time to see the Northern Lights at their peak. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And he knew the terrain. He'd shot a campaign there 2 years ago. He knew the safest trails, the best hidden spots, the places tourists never found. Trust me, he'd said. It'll be perfect. On January 14th, they flew to Reykjavik. On January 18th, Talia's body was found. Have you ever felt uneasy about a partner's travel suggestion but couldn't say why? That instinct, the one you ignore because you don't want to seem paranoid or ungrateful, that's the one Talia ignored. And it cost her everything. Let me tell you why Felix chose Iceland. Not for the Northern Lights. Not for the romance. But because Iceland, especially the south coast in January, is the perfect place to make someone disappear and call it an accident. The Aurora Ridge Resort sits 40 kilometers east of Vik, tucked between Skogafoss Waterfall and Salheimajökull Glacier. It's gorgeous. 12 glass-domed cabins scattered across black volcanic sand, geothermal hot tubs steaming under the stars, unobstructed views of the auroras when they dance across the sky. It's also isolated. The nearest neighbor is 15 kilometers away. The nearest hospital? An hour's drive in good weather. In January, when storms roll in from the Atlantic and bury the ring road in snow, help can be 3 hours away. Or more. Iceland has one of the lowest crime rates in the world, but tourists die here every year. They underestimate the cold. They wander too close to glacier edges. They slip into geothermal pools with water hot enough to boil skin off bone. They get caught in whiteout conditions and freeze to death 50 meters from their cars. The Icelandic Search and Rescue Association responds to hundreds of calls annually. Most end in rescue. Some don't. And here's the thing. When someone dies in Iceland's wilderness, the default assumption is accident. Not murder. Accident. Felix knew this. He'd researched it meticulously. His search history, later recovered by investigators, showed months of planning. He'd Googled Iceland tourist deaths per year, back in October. Glacier crevasse survival rate, in November. Geothermal pool temperatures Iceland, in December. He chose the south coast specifically because of the terrain. Glaciers with hidden crevasses. Waterfalls with icy, slippery rocks. Geothermal areas where the ground could collapse without warning. Cliffs where a fall would be instantly fatal. He chose January because of the darkness. 20 hours of night. 4 hours of weak, gray daylight. Perfect for staging something during those dark hours and discovering it in daylight when it's too late. He chose Aurora Ridge Resort because it was remote, romantic, and had exactly 0 surveillance cameras. He even chose their cabin. Cabin 5. The furthest from the main lodge. The one where you could scream and no one would hear you over the wind. But here's what Felix didn't count on. Icelandic hospitality is real. Staff at places like Aurora Ridge don't just check you in and ignore you. They notice things. They care. They remember. And Einar Halldórsson noticed everything. Would you notice if your friend's fiancé researched accident statistics for your honeymoon destination? Would you say something? Or would you assume you were overthinking it? Day 1. January 16th. Arrival. Felix and Talia arrived at Aurora Ridge around 2 p.m. The sun was already sinking toward the horizon. The light in Iceland's winter is brief, a pale ghost of itself. Einar was at the front desk when they checked in. He noticed Felix immediately. Confident, chatty, the kind of guy who made everyone feel like an old friend. He told Einar about his photography work, asked about the best spots for shooting the Northern Lights, mentioned he'd been to Iceland before and knew all the secret places tourists never see. Talia was quieter, polite, smiling, but tired. Long flight, Felix explained, squeezing her shoulder. She's not big on travel, but I'm converting her. Einar offered them a spot on his glacier tour the next morning. Small group. Safe. Popular with honeymooners. Thanks, but we're doing our own thing, Felix said. I used to guide tours myself, actually. We'll be fine. Something about the way he said it, we'll be fine, made Einar pause. But he smiled and handed them the key to cabin 5. That evening, another guest, a German couple in cabin 3, saw Felix and Talia at dinner. They seemed happy. Felix ordered champagne. Talia took photos of the Northern Lights starting to shimmer outside the restaurant's windows. But Lilia, the server, noticed something odd. Felix kept checking his phone. Not casually, obsessively, every few minutes. And when Talia tried to see what he was looking at, he angled the screen away. Weather forecast, he said when she asked. Storms coming tomorrow. Might mess with our plans. Talia frowned. I thought we were staying close to the resort tomorrow. We are, Felix said quickly. But I want to catch sunrise at Skogafoss before the weather turns. Trust me, it'll be incredible. After dinner, they walked back to their cabin. Alone. The Northern Lights swirled green and violet above them, reflecting off the snow. It should have been magical. Instead, it was the last time anyone saw Talia Kovac alive and smiling. Day 2, January 17th. The setup. The next morning, Lilia saw Felix at breakfast. Alone. Where's your wife? She asked. Sleeping in, he said, grinning. She's not a morning person. I'm heading out to grab some shots before the light gets flat. He left the resort at 9:30 a.m. in their rental car, a white Toyota Land Cruiser. At 11:15 a.m., a tourist named Henrik spotted the Land Cruiser parked near Skogafoss waterfall. He remembered it because Felix was unloading climbing rope, carabiners, and an ice axe from the trunk. Seemed like a lot of gear for a casual hike, Henrik later told police. Felix returned to the resort at 1:40 p.m. alone. He told Lilia that Talia was still at the cabin, resting. She's got a headache. Altitude maybe. But Aurora Ridge Resort sits at 50 meters above sea level. There's no altitude. That evening, the German couple saw Felix in the resort's hot tub. Again. Alone. When they asked about his wife, he said she wasn't feeling well. Probably just jet lag. She'll be fine tomorrow. At 9:47 p.m., Felix's phone pinged the cell tower nearest Salheimajokul Glacier, 7 kilometers from the resort. The ping lasted 4 minutes. At 10:33 p.m., his phone returned to the Aurora Ridge Tower. That night, the couple in cabin 4 heard something. Not screaming, nothing that dramatic. Just a muffled thud. Like furniture scraping. Then silence. They didn't think much of it. Honeymoon cabin. Thin walls. They turned up their TV and went to sleep. Day 3, January 18th. The murder. At 7:02 a.m., Felix burst into the resort's main lodge. He was frantic, breathless, pale. My wife, he gasped. She's gone. She went out this morning for a walk and she's not back. I think she's hurt. Lilia called the police immediately. Einar grabbed his gear, headlamp, thermal blanket, first aid kit. 2 other guides joined them. Where did she go? Einar asked. I don't know, Felix said, his voice breaking. She left a note. Said she wanted to see the sunrise alone. To clear her head. I woke up and she was gone. I searched the trails behind the cabin but... He stopped, tears streaming. The ice. There's so much ice. What if she slipped? Show me the note, Einar said. Felix hesitated. Just for a second. It's in the cabin. I'll grab it. But he didn't. He stayed with the group, directing them toward the eastern trail, toward the glacier's edge. That's when Einar made a decision that would crack this case wide open. He told Felix he was going back to cabin 5 to check the generator, make sure power stayed on for the search team. Felix couldn't say no without looking suspicious. And that's when Einar found it. The Google searches, the insurance receipt, the one-way ticket, the phone still connected to the TV. But wait, there's more. In the bathroom trash, buried under tissues, Einar found something else. Strands of long brown hair. Talia's hair. Not cut, pulled, clumped together with blood at the roots. And on the edge of the bathtub, a tiny smear. Rust-colored, barely visible. Blood. Einar called the police again. You need to come to cabin 5. Now. In 20 hours of darkness, how many ways could someone stage a disappearance? Felix thought he'd planned for everything. But he didn't plan for a tour guide who actually gave a damn. The Reykjavik Metropolitan Police sent a team by helicopter. By 10:15 a.m., cabin 5 was a crime scene. Felix stood outside, shivering in his jacket, maintaining his devastated husband act. I don't understand, he kept saying. Why are they in our cabin? We need to find Talia. Detective Olafur Thorson arrived at 11 a.m. Veteran investigator. 23 years with the force. He'd worked tourist accidents before, falls, hypothermia, drownings. He knew what real panic looked like. This wasn't it. Felix's grief was loud, dramatic, almost performative. He kept repeating the same phrases. She's probably hurt. We need to search. Why are we wasting time? Real grief is messy, incoherent. People forget details, contradict themselves. Felix's story was too consistent. Olafur pulled Einar aside. Show me what you found. The cabin told a story Felix didn't intend. The champagne, untouched. The lipstick on the glass, but no other signs they'd celebrated. Her suitcase, still mostly packed. His suitcase, nearly empty, except for her passport, wedged between his shirts. Why would her passport be in his suitcase? The bathroom revealed more. Luminol testing lit up the bathtub like a constellation. Blood. Not just the smear Einar saw, everywhere. The drain. The walls. The floor. Someone had tried to clean it. Hastily. Missed the edges. And then there was the phone. Felix's phone, still connected to the TV. The search history painted a chilling timeline. January 10th. Life insurance policy online fast approval. January 12th. Iceland glacier accidents per year. January 14th. How long does it take to freeze to death Iceland winter? January 16th. Geothermal pool near Vik GPS coordinates. January 17th. 2:47 a.m. Do bodies sink in geothermal water? January 17th. 3:12 a.m. Iceland murder rate. January 17th. 9:03 p.m. Can police track phone in Iceland? Olafur stared at the screen. Get me his phone. Now. At 11:45 a.m., they asked Felix for his phone. For elimination purposes, Olafur said calmly. We need to check if Talia tried to call you. Felix handed it over. Too quickly. Of course. Anything to help. But here's the thing about deleting search history. It doesn't disappear. Not really. The forensic team pulled everything within hours. At 1:20 p.m., they found her. Not on the trail. Not near the glacier. Not anywhere Felix said she'd be. They found Talia Kovac submerged in a geothermal pool 8 kilometers from the resort. A hidden spot, off-trail, known only to locals and experienced guides. The kind of place Felix would have scouted ahead of time. The water was 47 degrees Celsius. Hot enough to obscure time of death. Hot enough to destroy trace evidence. Almost. The autopsy would later reveal she'd been dead before she entered the water. Blunt force trauma to the back of her skull. Consistent with being struck by something heavy. Maybe the edge of a bathtub. Defensive wounds on her hands. She'd fought back. Bruises on her wrists. She'd been restrained. And here's the detail that broke the case wide open. Under her fingernails, skin cells. DNA. Felix's DNA. At 3:30 p.m., Detective Olafur sat across from Felix in an interview room at the Reykjavik police station. "Tell me again what happened this morning." Felix repeated his story. "Talia left early. A note. She wanted to see the sunrise. He woke up and she was gone." "Show me the note." I told you, it's in the cabin. We searched the cabin. There's no note." Felix blinked. Maybe she took it with her? Or the wind." "Felix, we found her." His face went white. "Is she?" "She's dead." Felix crumpled, sobbing, hands over his face. "No. No, no, no." "Where? What happened? You tell me." I don't know. She must have fallen. The ice. She was in a geothermal pool. 8 kilometers from where you said she went." Felix looked up. His eyes were red, but dry. "That doesn't make sense. Why would she go there?" "You tell me. You're the one who searched for geothermal pool coordinates 2 nights ago." Silence. "Felix, your wife has your DNA under her fingernails. She has defensive wounds. She fought someone. And we have your search history. Life insurance, body decomposition, how long it takes to freeze to death. You want to explain that?" Felix leaned back. His grief evaporated like steam. "I want a lawyer." If you're still here after learning Felix had researched geothermal pool locations and body decomposition rates before their honeymoon, you're the exact person this community is built for. Most people scroll past uncomfortable truths about relationships and control. Most people don't want to believe someone could plan murder while booking honeymoon flights. But you're still watching, which means you recognize patterns. You pay attention. You don't look away from hard realities. That makes you someone who might actually recognize these warning signs in real life, in your own relationships, your friends' situations, your family members' choices. Hit subscribe because we're building a community of people who refuse to stay silent when something feels wrong. Share this video because the algorithm buries content this real, this necessary, this uncomfortable. Your share could put this story in front of someone currently living with a partner who's isolating them, controlling them, planning something. The subscribe button is free. But your silence, that could cost someone everything. Now here's where this story gets darker. While investigating Felix's phone and laptop, Icelandic police contacted Interpol. Standard procedure for foreign nationals involved in homicides. An alert came back within hours. From Norway. 4 years earlier, a woman named Ingrid Solberg died during a hiking trip in Trolltunga. She was with her boyfriend at the time. They'd been together 6 months. The death was ruled accidental. She fell from a cliff while taking photos. Her boyfriend's name? Felix Rasmussen. The Norwegian police had investigated. Felix's story checked out. He was devastated. Cooperative. He'd tried to save her, he said. Climbed down the cliff. Called for help. By the time rescuers arrived, she was dead. The case was closed. But here's what Norwegian investigators didn't know in 2021, because they had no reason to check. 3 weeks before Ingrid's death, Felix had taken out a life insurance policy on her. 500,000 kroner. Beneficiary: Felix Rasmussen. She'd been his girlfriend for 6 months. They weren't married, but he'd convinced her to list him as beneficiary, just in case something happened during their adventurous lifestyle. Ingrid's family found this odd but didn't push. They were grieving, and Felix seemed heartbroken. He even paid for part of her funeral. He collected the insurance payout 2 months later. Now, Detective Olafur pulled Ingrid's case file. He read every interview, studied every photo, looked at the timeline. The similarities were staggering. Both women were in their late 20s. Both were analytical, careful types who rarely took risks. Both were dating Felix for less than a year. Both agreed to remote, dangerous trips they didn't initially want to take. Both died in accidents that involved falls and isolated locations. and both had life insurance policies Felix took out weeks before their deaths. But here's the detail that made Olafur's blood run cold. In Ingrid's case, a hiker found something near the cliff edge. A small, handheld voice recorder, the kind journalists use. It had been damaged by weather, but investigators recovered fragments of audio. It was Ingrid's voice. "Felix, stop. You're scaring me. Just get closer to the edge. It'll be an amazing shot." "I don't want to." "Don't be boring. Come on." Then muffled sounds. Struggling. A scream that cut off abruptly. But the Norwegian police had dismissed it. The recording was fragmented. Could have been from any time during the trip. Could have been playful banter taken out of context. There was no proof Felix pushed her. The case stayed closed. Until now. Olafur contacted Norwegian police. Reopen Ingrid Solberg's case. Felix Rasmussen is a serial killer. But the twist, the real twist, is this. Talia knew. Remember that conversation with her sister Nina? When Talia found articles about Ingrid on Felix's laptop. She didn't just find articles. She found Felix's journal. Handwritten. Hidden in a locked drawer. And in that journal, Felix had written out his plan for Ingrid's death in meticulous detail. Routes. Weather patterns. How to stage the fall. How to react when questioned. Talia had photographed pages of it with her phone. And she'd sent them to Nina. Not immediately. She was scared, confused, didn't know what to believe. But 3 days before the Iceland trip, Talia sent the photos to Nina's email with a message. "If something happens to me, give this to the police." Nina didn't open the email until after Talia died. When she did, she forwarded it to Icelandic police immediately. The journal didn't just incriminate Felix for Ingrid's murder. It outlined his plan for Talia. Every step. The Iceland location. The geothermal pool. The timing. The life insurance policy. Even backup plans if things went wrong. But here's what Felix didn't know. Talia had hidden something else. On the morning of January 18th, the morning she died, Talia had woken up at 4 a.m. She knew something was wrong. Felix had been acting strange the night before. Restless. Checking his phone constantly. Pacing. She'd seen his search history the day before. Do bodies sink in geothermal water? She knew. So she activated her phone's emergency SOS feature. The one that records audio and location and sends it to pre-selected contacts when triggered. Her contact. Nina. At 5:47 a.m., Talia's phone began recording. Felix's voice. "Come on. I want to show you something." Talia. "Felix, it's dark. Can't we wait? Trust me. It's worth it." Sounds of movement. Car doors. Driving. At 6:14 a.m., the car stopped. "Felix. This way. Be careful, the rocks are slippery." Talia. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." Then, at 6:22 a.m., Talia's voice changed. Sharp. Terrified. "You're going to kill me." Felix didn't respond. "That's what this is, isn't it? That's what you did to Ingrid. And now." Talia, stop. "I found your journal, Felix. I know everything." Silence. Long. Heavy. Then Felix's voice cold. "Then you know there's no point screaming." The recording captured everything. The struggle. Her begging. The sound of impact. Her body hitting water. And then Felix's voice again, breathless. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But you shouldn't have looked." The recording ended at 6:31 a.m. It uploaded to Nina's phone at 6:33 a.m. Talia had outsmarted him. Even in her final moments, knowing she was going to die, she'd made sure he wouldn't get away with it. What would you do if you were Talia? If you realized your husband was planning to kill you in one of the most isolated places on Earth? Would you run? Would you fight? Or would you do exactly what she did? Make sure he'd pay for it, even if you couldn't survive. Felix Rasmussen was charged with the premeditated murder of Talia Kovac on January 19, 2025. The trial began in Reykjavik District Court on March 3rd. Iceland's legal system is different from the US or UK. No jury. A panel of judges. The trial was swift, methodical. The evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution presented the search history, the life insurance policy, the journal, the audio recording from Talia's phone, the forensic evidence, her blood in the bathtub, his DNA under her fingernails, the timeline proving his story was impossible. They also presented evidence from Norway. Ingrid's case was officially reopened. Felix was charged with her murder as well. Felix's defense tried to claim temporary insanity, argued that Talia's discovery of his journal had triggered a psychotic break, that he'd panicked. But the journal entries contradicted that. They were calm, calculated, written over months. One entry, dated December 8th, read, "Talia suspects nothing. She's too trusting, too logical. She thinks people operate on reason. She doesn't understand that some of us operate on opportunity." Another, dated January 4th, "Iceland will work. Remote, cold, easy to stage. And if she fights, the geothermal pool will erase everything. By the time they find her, there'll be nothing left but bones." The judges deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty. On all counts. In Iceland, life imprisonment means a minimum of 16 years. But the court specified Felix would serve the maximum, life without parole eligibility, given the severity and premeditation of the crimes. He's currently incarcerated at Litlaron Prison, about 45 kilometers from Reykjavik. He'll likely never leave. Norway has also issued a warrant. If he ever completes his Icelandic sentence, he'll be extradited to face charges for Ingrid's murder. The Aurora Ridge Resort closed Cabin 5 permanently. They've converted it into a memorial space, a quiet room with photos of Talia, information about domestic violence warning signs, and resources for people who feel unsafe in relationships. Nina Kovac has become an advocate for recognizing coercive control and isolation tactics. She gives talks across Europe about the red flags she missed, about how predators weaponize adventure and spontaneity to isolate their victims. Talia was brilliant, Nina says in interviews. She analyzed data for a living. She spotted patterns no one else saw. But she couldn't see this one, because she loved him. And love makes you ignore what your brain is screaming at you. The Icelandic government implemented new safety protocols for remote tourism destinations. All honeymoon packages at isolated resorts now require guests to check in daily with front desk staff. Tour operators are trained to recognize signs of coercive relationships. And all rental cabins must have working emergency communication devices. Talia's company, the cybersecurity firm where she worked, established the Talia Kovac Foundation. It funds research into digital evidence preservation for domestic violence cases and provides free tech resources to survivors trying to document abuse. Her story went international. News outlets across Europe covered it. True crime podcasts dissected every detail. But what struck people most wasn't the violence, it was the intelligence. Talia knew she was going to die, and she made sure Felix would spend the rest of his life paying for it. Before I tell you what Felix said during his final statement in that Icelandic courtroom, you need to understand something that most true crime doesn't teach. Talia was smart. She photographed his journal and sent it to her sister. She activated her emergency SOS recording. She even tried to hide evidence in their cabin that investigators would find. She wasn't naive. She wasn't stupid. She wasn't asking for it by trusting someone she married. But she didn't know that adventure-obsessed partners who insist on remote, dangerous honeymoons might have darker reasons. That spontaneous people who change plans constantly might be planning something. That the person who knows all the best secret spots might know them for the wrong reasons. If you've watched this far, you've learned these lessons. Now make them count. Subscribe so you never miss these warning signs. Share so her story reaches someone planning an isolated honeymoon with a controlling partner. Comment the red flags you spotted early, because your comment might be what clicks for someone else. Talia can't warn anyone anymore, but her story can save lives through you, through us, through this community of people who refuse to let stories like this be forgotten. Subscribe, share, comment, act. On March 24, 2025, Felix Rasmussen was given the opportunity to make a final statement before sentencing. He stood, straightened his suit jacket, and said something that made everyone in the courtroom go silent. "I loved her." Nina, sitting in the front row, started to stand. The judge motioned for her to sit. Felix continued, "I loved Talia. I loved Ingrid. I loved them both. But they didn't understand me. They wanted to change me. Make me normal. Make me safe." He paused. "I'm not safe. I never have been. And I shouldn't have to pretend I am just to make other people comfortable." The lead judge, Sigrun Haraldsdottir, stared at him. "Mr. Rasmussen, do you understand that you murdered 2 women?" "I freed them," Felix said. "From boring lives. From routines. From dying slowly in offices and cubicles. I gave them adventure. I gave them the edge they were too scared to find themselves." Nina broke. "You gave them nothing but terror and death." Security moved toward her, but Judge Haraldsdottir held up a hand. "Let her speak." Nina stood, tears streaming. "My sister was happy. She loved her job. She loved her life. She didn't need your chaos. She didn't need your edge. She needed safety. She needed trust. And you took everything from her because you're empty inside and you wanted to feel powerful." Felix smiled. Actually smiled. "She fought hard. I'll give her that." That was the moment the courtroom erupted. Talia's parents lunged toward him. Security intervened. Judge Haraldsdottir called for order. When the room settled, she delivered the sentence. Life imprisonment. No parole eligibility. And then she added something unusual. "Mr. Rasmussen, you claim to love adventure. To thrive on edges and risks. You'll spend the rest of your life in a 6-by-8-meter cell with no view of mountains, no access to wilderness, no adventure whatsoever. You wanted to freeze your wife's body in Iceland's landscape. Instead, you'll freeze in our system. And you'll have decades to think about how Talia Kovac, the woman you underestimated, outsmarted you even as you killed her." Felix's smile disappeared. He was led out of the courtroom. He didn't look back. Talia Kovac's story isn't just about murder. It's about control disguised as spontaneity. It's about adventure weaponized into isolation. It's about recognizing that the person who pushes you toward danger might be the danger itself. Here's what we need to remember. Red flag number 1. Isolation disguised as romance. Felix convinced Talia that skipping calls with her sister meant they were prioritizing their relationship. He framed her job as draining when it really gave her independence. He insisted on remote locations where she'd have no support system, no witnesses, no escape. If someone you love is pulling you away from everyone else and calling it love, that's not romance. That's control. Red flag number 2. Financial enmeshment happens fast. Felix was in massive debt, but took out a €2 million life insurance policy on Talia within months of their engagement. He had access to her accounts. He knew her financial situation better than she knew his. If someone rushes financial intimacy, shared accounts, insurance policies, access to your money, before emotional intimacy is solid, pause. Ask why. Protect yourself. Red flag number 3. Your instincts are data. Talia told Nina she felt uneasy. She found disturbing evidence but talked herself out of trusting it. She ignored the voice screaming that something was wrong because she didn't want to seem paranoid. Your gut feeling, that tightness in your chest, that unease you can't explain, is your brain processing patterns your conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. Listen to it. Always. Red flag number 4. Trust me is not a plan. Felix used trust me constantly. Trust me about Iceland. Trust me about the route. Trust me that this remote cabin is safe. He positioned skepticism as lack of love. Real trust is earned through consistency, transparency, and respect. If someone demands blind trust while refusing to answer reasonable questions, that's manipulation. Red flag number 5. Obsession with danger. Not everyone who loves adventure is dangerous. But if someone consistently pushes you toward situations that make you uncomfortable, dismisses your fear as weakness, or romanticizes risk-taking in ways that ignore your boundaries, that's a problem. Felix didn't love adventure. He loved control. The cliffs and glaciers and geothermal pools were just tools. In 20 hours of Icelandic darkness, Felix Rasmussen thought he'd found the perfect murder weapon, nature itself. But he underestimated 3 things. He underestimated a tour guide who noticed details others missed. He underestimated a legal system that wouldn't let a foreigner disappear into their wilderness without consequences. And most of all, he underestimated Talia Kovac, a woman who spent her last moments on Earth making absolutely certain her murderer would never taste freedom again. The northern lights still dance over Aurora Ridge Resort. Couples still travel to Iceland for honeymoons. The glaciers still shimmer under winter stars. But Cabin 5 stands empty. A reminder that paradise can become a grave when you're trapped with someone who sees you not as a partner, but as a problem to eliminate. Talia Kovac was 29 years old. She loved puzzles, Sunday FaceTime calls, and color-coded spreadsheets. She wanted to see Santorini. She deserved to grow old. Instead, she's buried in Copenhagen, far from the ice that tried to hide her body. But her story lives on. In every woman who trusts her instincts. In every friend who asks the hard questions. In every person who refuses to mistake isolation for intimacy. Felix wanted to erase her. Instead, she exposed him. And that's how you win, even when you lose everything. If this story made you think differently about red flags in relationships, if it made you want to check on a friend whose partner seems controlling, if it made you realize isolation isn't romantic, subscribe. Share it. Comment the warning signs you noticed. Because somewhere, someone needs to see this today. Someone is planning a honeymoon with a partner who Googled accident statistics instead of restaurants. Someone is ignoring their gut feeling because they don't want to seem ungrateful. Someone is Talia. And your share might save their life. Don't scroll past, act. Because love should never feel like survival. And honeymoons should never end in murder.
Before you click away, I need you to understand something. Right now, someone is watching this video with a knot in their stomach, because they recognize their own relationship in Felix and Talia's story. The isolation disguised as romance, the pushed boundaries, the ignored red flags. And in about 30 seconds, when this video ends, they'll have a choice. Keep scrolling. Forget what they just learned. Tell themselves it's different for me. Or click the next video. Keep learning. Keep recognizing patterns. Keep building the instinct that could save their life, or someone else's. You made it this far. That means you're not someone who looks away when things get uncomfortable. You're not someone who dismisses women's fear as paranoia. You're someone who pays attention. So here's what I'm asking. Don't let Talia's story end here. There are dozens more on this channel. Different locations, different methods, but the same patterns. The same red flags that people miss until it's too late. Each video you watch isn't entertainment, it's education. It's pattern recognition. It's the difference between noticing something's wrong and ignoring it because you don't want to seem dramatic. The next video is already queued up on your screen. Another story. Another victim who tried to warn someone. Another chance to learn what predators do, how they think, how they operate. Click it. Not for me. Not for the algorithm. But for the person who needs you to recognize their danger when they can't see it themselves. For the friend whose partner seems too perfect. For the co-worker whose fiancé isolates them from everyone. For the sister whose boyfriend's stories don't quite add up. Talia died taking Felix down with her. She fought until her last breath to make sure he'd never do this again. Now it's your turn to fight. By learning, by sharing, by refusing to stay silent when something feels wrong. The next story is waiting. And somewhere, someone desperately needs you to watch it. Don't click away. Click next.